6:43 a.m. Chicago was freezing. The misty streetlights hadn't fully shut off yet. In the heart of the city, the 52-story glass tower of Strathmore and Company, one of the largest financial firms in the country, was just beginning to wake. Employees poured into the marble-clad lobby like a mechanical tide. Dark overcoats, insulated coffee cups, earbuds barely hanging on, phones pressed to faces. No one looked at anyone. No one saw anything beyond their meeting schedules and blinking Teams notifications. And then, amid that rush, a sound rose up that made Marcus Ellington, CEO of Strathmore, halt in the middle of the marble corridor. A voice. Not in English. It was Mandarin, fluent, precise, crisp to every syllable. A woman's voice, soft but sharp, firm without being loud, gently guiding an older Asian gentleman toward the elevators. Marcus turned his head. He thought he'd misheard. Maybe someone from the international division had come in early. But no, the voice belonged to a woman in a burgundy janitor's uniform, left hand gripping a mop, right hand pointing toward the digital directory. Her hair was tied back neatly, her eyes calm and unwavering. The man she was helping, dressed in a dark blue overcoat and thick glasses, nodded quickly, like he'd just found a life raft in a sea of English. "Jishya," he said. She replied, voice soft as breeze. "Bouquet chi, Ju nin yitian yu kwai." "No problem. Wishing you a good day." Marcus barely had time to process what he'd heard when a delivery man approached, clutching a clipboard. She turned smoothly and shifted languages without missing a beat. Spanish. "Los despachos están al fondo, a la izquierda." The shipping offices are at the end of the hall, to the left. And then, without pause, she moved to assist a vendor struggling with a stack of mislabeled boxes. This time, French. Effortless, natural, like breathing. Marcus froze. He'd worked in 4 countries, graduated from Wharton, closed international deals worth hundreds of millions. But he had never, especially not inside the very building he ran, seen anyone switch between 3 languages like flipping a light switch. And what stunned him wasn't the language, it was the person speaking, a janitor. She moved quietly, modestly, blending into the everyday scenery like elevator music. No one had ever stopped to ask her name. No one had ever suspected that inside that sweat-damp uniform was a mind the entire company had overlooked for more than a decade. Marcus felt his throat go dry. How many times had he approved budgets for language services? How many meetings had they held about unlocking internal potential? How many strategy sessions on global talent? And now, on an ordinary morning, he realized, sometimes brilliance is mopping the floor right beneath your feet. Only no one's thought to look down. A question surfaced in his mind, sharp as a blade. How many people like her are being buried beneath their own job titles? That was the moment the system began to crack. Not because of a scandal, not because of a mistake, but because one woman, once invisible, spoke with a clarity that could no longer be ignored. The 27th floor, Strathmore's executive suite, was always lit before 7 a.m. This was not because the work was urgent, but because here, performance was a kind of light that people put on like a tailored suit. The espresso machine hissed out steam at exactly 6:55. The receptionist adjusted the white orchids every Monday and Thursday. Shoes, polished to a mirror's shine, glided across the charcoal carpet without leaving a trace, as if the people themselves weren't supposed to make any noise. It was also on this floor that staff learned how to say plenty without revealing anything, how to nod without agreeing, and most importantly, how to look through someone without letting them know they'd been seen. Meanwhile, 3 floors below, on B3, the fluorescent lights flickered gently, like the breath of someone who hadn't slept. The ceiling was raw, the paint peeling from the walls. The service elevator groaned in bursts whenever someone pressed the button too hard. Down there, Rosa Daniels was pushing her mop cart along the service corridor. Her left hand wore a glove, her right held a small broom. Every movement was a habit. 13 years in the making. Nothing wasted, nothing missed. She knew exactly when the executive floor would have a coffee spill. She knew which lunch hour the guest restroom would overflow. She even knew which meeting rooms were never used, but still had to be cleaned. And she did it all without being asked. Because Rosa understood the core rule of invisible work. People only remember you when you mess up. So don't give them a reason to remember. There were days she felt like a ghost in uniform. A part of the building's landscape. Spotless, essential, but nameless. Office workers referred to her with vague terms. The cleaning lady, that woman downstairs, the janitor. No one had ever asked what she liked to be called. Troy Benson, the basement floor supervisor, was probably the only person who knew her name. He'd once seen Rosa help a technician read medical documents in Portuguese, but he never mentioned it to anyone, because here, no one asked. At night, Rosa often scribbled German vocabulary onto scrap paper. She broke down syllables, marked stress patterns, studied like she was leaving her cleaning job tomorrow to consult on policy in Berlin. She didn't study to get promoted. She studied because it reminded her she was still alive, not just surviving. On the 27th floor, they hosted a seminar called Uncovering Hidden Talent, with international guest speakers. On B3, Rosa quietly mopped the archive room, the one without cameras. They talked about unlocking potential in the workforce. She lived that truth every day, just no one had invited her into the auditorium to hear it. And what no one knew was that when Marcus Ellington stood in front of her that morning, she had been holding on to her answer for over a decade. It's just, no one had ever asked. "How many languages do you speak?" Marcus had asked her in the elevator that morning. A simple question on the surface, but it took Rosa half a beat to answer. 9, plus Latin for reading, if that counts. He nodded, but she didn't look over. Maybe because she'd learned not to search for surprise in other people's eyes, it never lasted as long as you hoped. That evening, Rosa sat at a worn wooden table beside the window of her small South Side apartment. She dropped coins into a glass jar, spare change from the grocery store, the occasional tip from helping a guest find something. On the table lay an old book, Introduction to Swahili Grammar. The corners of the cover were frayed. The ink of the highlighter had faded, but every page was marked with pencil strokes, translations, syllables, IPA pronunciation notes. Next to it was a photo. A young woman in a graduation cap and gown, shoulder-length hair, standing between her parents with a smile that didn't yet know it was about to disappear. Her, Rosa at 23. A linguistics graduate from Kent State. Full scholarship. GPA near perfect. The plan was grad school. A lectureship. A future at the United Nations. There was a plan. But life didn't stop to ask if she could still follow it. Her mother was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer during spring break of Rosa's first year of grad school. Her father, a welder at an auto shop, quietly started selling off his tools to cover the cost of treatment. 6 months later, he suffered a stroke in their bedroom and never woke up. Rosa left school. Not because she lacked will, but because someone had to be bathed, fed, and walked through insurance paperwork. She came home to care for her mother, stayed until the end. By then, her bank account held $74 and a positive pregnancy test. The baby's father left 3 weeks later. Rosa didn't wait for more. She took a job at a grocery store, then night shifts at a nursing home, then janitorial work. Eventually, a manager at Strathmore saw her wiping down tables carefully in the break area and said, "Take the night shift here. No one's fighting for it. It's quiet. Has benefits." Rosa nodded, didn't negotiate. And just like that, B3 became her life's office. No nameplate, no LinkedIn profile. Just a few coworkers who called her Miss Rosa, a few who asked, "Where'd you learn French?" then walked away before she could answer. No one knew that every night, Rosa played cassette tapes to study German, read online news in Spanish, and translated Portuguese speeches just to stay fluent in sentence structure. No one ever asked why a woman holding a mop could read medical documents in classical Arabic. And Rosa never offered it, not because she was hiding, but because no one had ever listened long enough to hear. But when Marcus invited her to the executive floor and asked, "What's your name?" something shifted inside her, not because he was the CEO, but because, for the first time in 13 years, someone asked with eyes that truly waited for the answer. 3:18 p.m., Tuesday. Conference room 27C was quiet as a chapel. On screen, budget analysis from the Sao Paulo office with 3 Brazilian partners who had flown overnight to Chicago. The problem? The translator had just canceled last minute due to a personal emergency. The bigger problem? The partners spoke no English. The head of international affairs had exhausted every internal contact. No one was available. No one was skilled enough. No one trustworthy. Marcus Ellington stood by the window in silence. He glanced at his watch, then turned and walked out. B3. The service hallway was deserted. The lights flickered like always. Rosa Daniels was restocking microfiber cloths, her hair damp with sweat, the cuffs of her shirt faded with wear. "Ms. Daniels?" She turned. Her heart skipped half a beat. It was him, Marcus, the CEO. Again. No mistake. "I need a favor," he said, his voice calm, not commanding. "3 partners from Sao Paulo are here. The translator didn't show. I remember you said you speak Portuguese." Rosa hesitated, then gave a quiet nod. "Yes, I can." Conference room 27C. The atmosphere was stiff, cold, and uncertain. Rosa walked in, still wearing her uniform, her hair tied neatly. No long introductions, no apology for her clothes, only her voice, clear, precise, natural as breath. "Boa tarde, señores. Vamos comenzar?" "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Shall we begin?" Marcus sat quietly at the head of the table, watching. The tone of the meeting shifted as if someone had turned a dial. The partners' eyes softened, shoulders relaxed, fingers loosened around their coffee cups. One of them cracked a joke in his native language. Rosa didn't just understand. She replied with a rhythm and ease that could only come from Sao Paulo itself. The whole room broke into laughter for the first time that long afternoon. After 35 minutes, everything wrapped smoothly. The partners signed a preliminary agreement. Handshakes were exchanged. One of them turned to Marcus and asked in English, "Where's she from, the diplomatic corps?" Marcus smiled, eyes on Rosa as she quietly gathered coffee cups onto a tray. "No, she's from this building's basement." On the way out, Marcus asked, "Have you ever worked as a professional translator?" "No, just helped a few folks at hospitals, or neighbors with paperwork. I've never had formal training, never had the time." "Because of your daughter?" "Because of her. She's a nurse now, paid her own way through school, stubborn like her mama." They both laughed, not like the CEO and janitor, but like 2 people who understood something about each other without having to say it. Before parting, Rosa paused, looked at him. "I didn't do anything special today." Marcus tilted his head. "Maybe not to you, but to me, it was extraordinary." That night, he sat alone in his car, watching rain smear the streetlights into streaks of gold. In his lap were recruitment files from Ivy League schools. But in his mind was Rosa Daniels' voice, calmly steering a high-stakes meeting with words no one else in the building could even understand. And he knew. Some people don't need saving. They just need to be seen. Thursday morning, 8:02 a.m. The ground floor elevator doors opened. Rosa stepped in, still in uniform, her hair tied low as always, but this time she held a slim folder in her hands. An official appointment letter stamped read by HR. Starting today, she was no longer the night shift janitor in the basement. She was Cultural Liaison, International Affairs, a title that had never existed, signed into being by Marcus Ellington in his own steady hand. There was no grand welcome, no press release, just an internal email sent at 7:14 a.m. We are pleased to announce the appointment of Miss Rosa Daniels as Cultural Liaison for International Affairs, expanding our linguistic, cultural, and cross-border communication capabilities. Ms. Daniels has demonstrated exceptional skill in supporting foreign partners. We believe, with her quiet dedication and deep ability, she is the best fit for this role. Not one line mentioned she'd been a janitor. Not a word about studying foreign languages while scrubbing toilets on B2. Just this. The best fit. The reaction came in under an hour. In the break room on the 14th floor, 2 marketing associates whispered, "Who is she? I've got a master's from Georgetown and I'm still an assistant project manager. I heard she used to mop floors down by tech support. Probably Marcus trying to flex some diversity narrative. Just PR." In the hallway near the conference rooms, the tone turned sharper. "So now they're promoting someone without a degree into leadership? What's next? Security guards running HR?" But Rosa knew. She could feel it in the unfamiliar stares, the half-smiles that didn't reach the eyes, the unusual quietness between morning greetings. In a place long silent from being overlooked, silence now had a different meaning. It was pushback. 3 days later, she received a meeting request from someone higher than Marcus, Meredith Lang, a senior board member known for a leadership style as hard as steel and as cold as policy. 17th floor conference room, walnut table, leather chairs. The lighting dimmed like an interrogation room. Meredith didn't offer a handshake. "Miss Daniels, I've read your file. No completed college degree, no international language certifications, no executive experience. Why do you believe you deserve that position?" Rosa didn't flinch. Her eyes were steady, her shoulders are firm. "Because I speak 9 languages. Because I just untangled 3 misinterpreted contracts across 3 countries. And because I didn't do it to impress anyone. I did it because no one else was trusted enough to step in." Meredith raised an eyebrow, but didn't let up. "You think a top-tier company should be run on instinct and goodwill?" Rosa's voice was calm, unwavering. "No, I think a company should be run on results. And I have results." For the first time, Meredith didn't respond immediately. She simply lifted a hand and closed the folder. "You're a gamble." Rosa stood, voice still even. "I've been a gamble my whole life, and I know how to win one hand at a time." She left the room without looking back. But she knew. Every step she took, no matter how soft, was shaking the foundation of a system that thought itself untouchable. The glass door of room 17 closed behind Rosa Daniels. No one in the hallway spoke, but every head turned. Not to look at the suit she still hadn't had time to buy, but to watch how she walked, steady, unapologetic, needing no applause. The next morning, on the 6th floor outside HR, a young technician named Malik left an anonymous note on the company bulletin board. "If she can do it, maybe it's time I relearn my mother tongue." Below it, in slanted handwriting, "I'll learn with you. Adisa, electrical maintenance." 3 days later, the nameplate outside the company's largest conference room was taken down. Old name, James L. Bishop, Strategic Council Room. New name, the Daniels Room. No ceremony, no applause, just a quiet nod from Marcus as he passed by, and the tearful gaze of Troy Benson, the man who had once assigned Rosa to clean that very room for 6 years straight. That same week, a white envelope appeared on Rosa's desk. No return address, just 3 italicized words. "We see you." Inside was a small note, handwritten in blue ink. I used to think I'd always be treated like spare parts, but when you spoke up, I started to reconsider myself. Thank you, not for doing something extraordinary, but for daring to exist fully. Rosa finished reading. She didn't cry. She simply folded the note and placed it in the drawer, right beside her old janitor badge, as a reminder. The past isn't something to hide. It's the origin of truth. A few weeks later, a nervous intern knocked gently on her office door. He was Vietnamese, name tag read Minh Tran. His voice was small, eyes unsure. Ms. Rosa, my mom cleans rooms at a hotel. She speaks 5 languages, but I used to hide that at school. Rosa smiled. Didn't ask why, just said, "Don't be ashamed of where you start. Shame is letting the world decide if you're worth anything." That same week, Marcus invited Rosa to the 52nd floor, the one reserved for executive meetings only. "There's something I want to build," he said, "not just for you, but for everyone who's never been seen." The program's name, Voice Inside. A new initiative, offering skill-building workshops, language support, and advancement pathways for all non-administrative staff. Would you like to help create it? Rosa didn't hesitate. Actually, I started thinking about it 10 years ago. No one ever asked. 1 month after the Voice Inside program officially launched, Strathmore and company began to change, not through slogans printed on banners, but through small, quiet shifts. On the maintenance floor, the tech crew started practicing Spanish together during lunch breaks. On the 10th floor, a front desk assistant from Ethiopia was invited to translate documents for the Dubai office. On beat 2, an aging security guard began telling stories from his hometown in French to interns during their breaks. No one gave orders. They just needed to see someone brave enough to begin. And that person was Rosa Daniels. One afternoon in mid-October, she was invited to speak at the International Communication Leadership Conference in Boston. No longer the woman in uniform, she took the stage as a keynote speaker, still herself. Beige blazer, low-tied hair, worn leather notebook in hand. No PowerPoint, no spreadsheets, just a true story. I used to be judged by the shoes I wore, by the job I did, by my silence. But I kept learning, kept translating, kept listening, because I believed that someday someone would stop and ask, "What's your name?" And when that day came, I was ready to answer. The entire auditorium rose to their feet, not because she was a symbol, but because they saw themselves in her, overlooked, underestimated, once convinced they were just the person on the edge. That night, back in her hotel room, Rosa opened a drawer and pulled out a small plaque Marcus had given her. The Daniels Room, where every forgotten voice is heard. She placed it next to the old badge she'd worn for 13 years, not to dwell on the past, but to remember. Every step she took was living proof of a single truth. Talent doesn't need certification to be real. It only needs a chance to be heard. One day, Minh Tran, the Vietnamese intern, stood up during a team meeting and fluently translated a section of a report from Japanese. Applause filled the room. He blushed. Rosa saw herself in him, the younger version. And she knew, when one person dares to step into the light, they carry an entire generation with them. Never judge someone by the name tag they wear. Never assume a person is just the janitor, the receptionist, or the one in the background. Because talent doesn't come with a uniform. Intelligence doesn't need a diploma to be real. And brilliance might be mopping the floor right beneath you, waiting for you to stop and finally see it. Thank you for spending time with the inspiring story of Rosa Daniels, a woman of humble beginnings, extraordinary talent, and a heart that never stopped learning, hoping, and giving. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone who's ever been overlooked or underestimated, or if you yourself have ever felt invisible in the world, then we hope today you know this. You matter. You deserve to be seen. Don't forget to like this video and share it if you want to pass on this message of hope to someone you care about. And if you'd like to keep following powerful, real human stories like this one, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next video. We have so much more to share with you, and every view, every subscription, helps lift up voices that have been forgotten for far too long. Thank you, truly. We'll see you in the next story.